kids. I sure love you. I love you so much I have to redo this video 2 times because the last one, the sound didn't work. Before I start, I want to tell you a joke. What did the dinosaur say when he fell off his bike? I'm so sorry. If you have any dinosaur jokes you want to share with me, you be sure to let me know. Because this week, we get to read a story about dinosaurs. And it is actually a biography. That means it is a true story about real characters. But before we do that, let's go ahead and talk about our vocabulary words. We have exact, discovered, removed, growled, amazed, explained, guard, and souvenirs. So number 1, exact. The map showed the exact place to dig for old bones. There's X marks the spot. It's in this exact spot on the map. Number 2, discovered. This old shark's tooth was discovered on a beach. That means it was found by a scientist. Number 3, remove. The scientist uses a brush to gently remove or take away sand. So remove means take away. Growled. The dog growled and barked as it dug up the old bone. 5, amazed. The girl was amazed at the size of the dinosaur teeth in the museum. Have you ever seen dinosaurs' bones or fossils? If so, let me know in an email. I'd love to know what you've seen. Number 6, explained. The man explained or told about the dinosaur. So explain means to tell about. Number 7, the word is guard. A guard makes sure no one touches anything in the museum. And number 8, souvenirs. He bought souvenirs to remember his day at the museum. Souvenirs are things that you bring home, not necessarily that you have to buy, but something you bring that you keep to remind you of something important. Let's go back and talk for 1 second about fossils. Sometimes parts of animals or plants that lived long ago can be found today. These are called fossils. An animal bone is an example of a fossil. Fossils can be found all over the world. Scientists look for fossils to help them learn about the past. Some fossils are on display at the museums. You will read about a girl and her dog who discovered fossils in The Dog That Dug for Dinosaurs. And the author for this story is Shirley Ray Redmond. At her home in New Mexico, Shirley Ray Redmond begins her day by making up early and watching the many birds that come to the feeders in her yard. Then she's ready to sit down and start writing. Even a child. But Stacy Schuett, she is the illustrator. And it says, even as a child, Stacy Schuett wanted to be an artist or a writer. I was a dreamy kind of little kid who loved to make stuff up, she says. She has illustrated many books, including ones about pirates and trees. Okay, The Dog That Dug for Dinosaurs. While we're reading this, let's think of the question, how can you learn about animals that lived long ago? A long, long time ago, there was a little dog named Trey. He was black and white all over. He had friendly brown eyes and a very wiggly tail. Trey lived in England. Trey was a real dog, and this is an honestly true story about him. Trey loved 2 things most in the whole world. First, he loved Mary Anning. She was 12 years old and lived with her family in a small cottage near the beach in Lyme Regis. Secondly, Trey loved going with Mary to dig for fossils. So what details does this author give us about Trey, the dog? It talks a lot about how he is black and white and has very friendly brown eyes and a wiggly tail. And we also know he loved to dig for fossils. So what are fossils anyway? They are the remains of animals and plants that died a long time ago. When a leaf or bone gets pressed between layers of sea mud, it leaves an imprint. After many years, the mud hardens to rock. Why do you think he chose to use a real photograph? The author, or she, I should say. Why did the author choose to show you this real fossil? I think it was probably to let you understand what a fossil looks like. Trey and Mary knew that they would find the very best fossils high up on the cliffs around the beach. They climbed up there every day. Trey sniffed the rocks. Sniff, sniff. He pawed the dirt. Scratch, scratch. Mary used a small hammer and chisel. Tap, tap, tap. With these tools, Mary carefully cut fossils out of the cliff, just as her father had shown her. Trey watched as she placed the fossils in her basket. Most of them looked like seashells. Mary and Trey sold them as souvenirs to the tourists that came by stagecoach to swim at the beach near their home. Why do you think that there's a lot of the fossils that they're finding are seashells? Because they live by the beach. One day, Trey and Mary discovered some very large bones sticking out of the rocks. They were huge. Trey growled and tried to dig the bones out. Mary used her hands to brush away the loose dirt. "Trey, we've discovered a monster," she declared. The bones were much too big for Trey and Mary to remove by themselves. "I'll go for help," Mary said. "You stay here, Trey." Trey barked loudly and sat down in front of the bones. He was a very good guard dog. Mary ran all the way back to town and asked some grown-ups to help her. "Trey and I have found something really special in the cliff," she told them. "Just wait and see." When the men saw the giant rib bones in the side of the cliff, they were amazed. "What a beast!" they cried. "Look at those sharp teeth." "Is it a crocodile?" one man asked. "Or a stubby whale?" "We don't know what it is," Mary admitted. "But we know it's something special, don't we, Trey?" Trey yipped and wagged his tail. Why do you think they couldn't figure out what it was? They'd never seen anything like that before. There's the rest of it. There's the tail, and then there's the head. A rich man who lived nearby heard about the sea monster. He hurried to see it for himself. "I'll buy it," he cried. "I will give it to the British Museum in London." "Do you know what it is?" Mary asked. "It is called an ichthyosaur. Ichthyosaur. Do you see right here where it's in the parentheses? Ichthyosaur. They've broken it up into syllables to make it easier to read. The man told her. "That means fish lizard," he explained. "It's like a dinosaur with fins." Does it explain to you what an ichthyosaur is? Yeah, it's a dinosaur with fins. And when you look at it, it looks like both a lizard and a fish, doesn't it? It kind of is interesting. The amazing news spread about the gigantic fish lizard and the dog and little girl who had found it. Soon, many strangers came to Lyme Regis, where Mary and Trey lived. They all wanted to hunt for fossils, too. The men wore tall top hats. The women wore frilly bonnets. They carried pretty umbrellas called parasols. Mary shook her head and smiled. She rubbed Trey's soft ears. They watched the strangers together. "They don't have the right tools," Mary whispered. "They are wearing the wrong kind of shoes, aren't they, silly Trey?" "Silly. Aren't they silly, Trey?" Trey yipped and chased his tail. Why did they come to Lyme Regis? Why did these visitors come to Lyme Regis? Or Lyme Regis? Lyme Regis, that sounds good right now. But why did they come to Lyme Regis? They want to look for fossils. And they know where to go, probably because it was in the newspapers. What did Mary think of those visitors? She thought they were pretty strange, didn't she? Curious scientists visited Lyme Regis too. One man came from the university in Oxford. His name was William Buckland. He went to the old carpenter shop where Mary and Trey sold their fossils. Can you show me where you found your ichthyosaur, young lady? He asked politely. Do you think you could find the exact spot? Trey can find it, Mary boasted. Together, Mary and Mr. Buckland followed the little dog across the beach and up to the cliffs. Trey sniffed the rocks. Sniff, sniff. He pawed the dirt. Scratch, scratch. Suddenly he yipped. Then he sat down. Mary pointed. It was the exact place where she had discovered the strange fish lizard. What an intelligent dog, Mr. Buckland declared. Trey wagged his tail. So what did Trey do that made Mr. Buckland think he was smart? He led him to the exact spot, didn't he? Trey and Mary continued to dig for fossils. They were very careful. Mary watched for falling rocks like her dad told her. Trey looked out for storms and high tides. Then, one day, they discovered another giant creature. Look, Trey, Mary cried. Is it a sea dragon? Trey sniffed the skeleton and snapped at it with his teeth. The creature had a long, long neck. Its backbones was like a humped turtle shell. Instead of feet and legs, it had 4 large paddles. But it wasn't a sea dragon. Mr. Buckland called it a plesiosaur. One day, Trey and Mary found a fossil that no one in England had ever found before. This one had huge bony wings like a bat and a long, sharp jaw. Trey growled. It looks like a gigantic flying lizard, Mary declared. The scientists thought so too, and that's why they named it a pterodactyl. That means lizard with wings. Over the years, Trey, Mary, and Mr. Buckland became good friends. They showed him where to find the best fossils in Lyme Regis. Mr. Buckland brought books about dinosaurs for Mary. He brought beef bones for Trey. Mary, with Trey on her lap, studied her books every day. When Trey's whiskers turned gray and Mary was all grown up, they still collected fossils and sold them in the old carpenter shop. There were boxes and baskets filled with fossils on the floor and on the shelves. Some of the fossil creatures were so big they couldn't fit through the door. Sometimes children and tourists stopped in to buy fossils of ancient sand dollars or tiny fish and curly shells. Many scientists came to the shop to buy fossils too. They brought carts and wagons to haul away the really large ones. Her and Mr. Buckland really liked each other, didn't they? They loved learning about dinosaurs together. I'm glad that it's kind of nice that they became friends, isn't it? Trey and Mary Anning became very famous. Today, if you go to the Natural History Museum in London, you can see the large fossils they discovered together. You can also see a famous painting of Mary holding her fossil basket and Trey, the dog, that dug for dinosaurs. And there's a picture of Mary. They probably should have maybe gotten an award for finding fossils. That's just an opinion I have, because it tells what I'm thinking. But I'm thinking that would be a good opinion. I think one of the facts that was in this is that, let's see, let me think of a fact. A fact maybe would be that the plesiosaur had a long neck and a hump on its back. That would be a fact. You see the difference of an opinion is what someone thinks. A fact is something that can be proven. That's going to be important to remember this week as you're studying. Okay, hopefully this time it worked.